The following is an exclusive presentation of Jessup Broadcasting, the sports leader in Southeast Georgia.
World famous. The world famous Butch and Bob Show.
World famous Butch and Bob Show right here on WIFO FM in Jessup. Big Dog Country Radio. Butch Hubbard here with you along Bob Morgan on this Tuesday morning, 19th day of January. And Bob, we've got a special guest on the phone with us right now, live from Atlanta.
Yeah, as we mentioned, we're fortunate to have our legislators with us all during the session. Mondays with Meeks, Tuesdays with Tillery, Wednesdays with Workheiser, Tuesdays with Tillery. As State Senator Blake Tillery's on the phone with us. Blake, how you doing today?
Doing all right. How about you, Bob?
Doing great. Appreciate you taking your time out of your busy schedule to be with us here on the show during the session. The session was not in session yesterday due to the holiday, but in session today. I see where the pandemic has hit both the House and the Senate, so I know you're getting tested twice a week. What's the story on that? Is there a threat that it possibly could be shut down again?
Yeah, well, actually, I just finished my twice-a-week testing just about 5 minutes ago, right before I walked back into the office here to call in to you guys down in Jessup. And thank y'all for letting me do this weekly. I appreciate it. I know Stephen Meeks and Bill Workheiser do as well. We actually are not in session today, so remember, it's a 40-day session, but those 40 days are not consecutive. We're out this week, out of session, but everyone's up here working on budget week. And, of course, you know, with my role as appropriations chairman, that becomes really my biggest and busiest time. I can tell you, I don't know that I've done anything except the budget since last Monday. So today we'll have budget meetings that start at 9 o'clock. They'll run till about 4 p.m. Just agency heads in and out. It starts with the governor. Governor Kemp will be with us at 9:05. Then we'll have an economic outlook that follows shortly afterwards. And then the biggest agency that's people are talking about right now, public health, will be on at 10. And then it rolls from there with agriculture, education, et cetera, on down. Tomorrow we'll start in a little bit earlier. We'll come in at 8 o'clock and do the same thing again, and then do the same thing again on Thursday.
As I mentioned to Stephen Meeks yesterday, I got a chance to watch the State of the State address, and the governor, commended you and your staff for putting the budget together. The biggest ovation they got was during a pandemic year with everything going on. They didn't raise any taxes. They were to get the budget, cut a bunch from the, I think, 2 million, whatever it was from the budget. You know better than I do. But again, it was a tremendous feat for you and your staff to get that budget approved, everything going on last year. And I'm sure you got another big task this year. That's the question everybody wants to know. Are taxes, I don't see a tax increase proposed by the governor. So how's the budget going to work this year?
Yeah, well, thank you for that kind word. Our staff up here is very thin. Remember that there's one assistant for every 2 senators. So we're a citizen legislature. On the House side, there's one assistant for every 6 House members. So staff's small. You got to do a lot of the work yourself. And thanks for those kind words. But a lot of people
those are the words of the governor. I heard in the speech. I'm just passing on what the governor said.
We ended up taking what you said was absolutely right. We started with taking out about $2.7 billion. That number will be etched in my head forever. And then we ended up at the end taking it out. We were able to find a little bit of cushion where some agencies had more revenue than we thought. And it ended up taking out at the end about $2.2 billion out of last year's budget. Because the economy has been slightly stronger, really, I think, and I've told you that I feel like it's gilded. I think it's driven by federal dollars. We're going to be able to add back about $500,000 of that, so we're going to end up being about $1.5 billion off from the budget that was originally proposed last year for finishing up this year. So even next year's budget won't put us quite back where folks thought we would have been last year. But it's the people of Georgia expect us to be frugal with their tax dollars. I think I've said this since the folks in our area were kind enough to elect me 6 years ago. We have to remember we're not spending our money, we're spending your money. And we're trying to be very frugal as we do so.
When you go back to last year, some people forget this, but other states were shutting down and Georgia was getting all types of criticism nationwide for not shutting down, but the governor talked about that in the state address as well. The fact that they were able to stay open really did help with the economy as well. So, I'm sure that's the goal again. You see COVID spikes everywhere across the nation. I mean, still people dying from the disease. It's a very serious disease, but the governor and the state want to do everything they can to possibly stay open. Is that correct?
You're absolutely right. We're seeing some of the more liberal states sort of take our trend now. I saw where Governor Cuomo in New York said that, they can't afford to shut down again. I think you've seen the same thing come out of a lot more of the northeastern states, that they realize, hey, this is going to be something we have to manage and live with. On the topic of managing and living with it, you've seen Georgia really ramp up its vaccine program. We did poorly in the beginning, and we need to own that. When government does badly, we need to own that and be honest with folks about it. You've seen the governor jump in personally, Dr. Toomey as well, taking and putting the National Guard in the line of helping with distribution, with GEMA, et cetera, so that we can get that distribution out more. We've now used 45% of all the doses that we have, but that's not a good number. We need to be more at like 75, 85, pushing them out. And you've seen where we've moved from about 11,500 doses a day to really ramping that up and trying to double that number in these next few days, because the goal is to make it where businesses can stay open. The governor's been very clear that if the federal government were to mandate a close down, that he would try to exercise Georgia's rights under the 10th Amendment to keep Georgia open. He feels that people need their jobs and that they need the revenue from those jobs, and that business owners realize they can't take another 3-month shutdown. So I appreciate his leadership in that regard. It's been reflected in our revenues. It's why we're going to be able to continue to fund state troopers and school teachers and other state employees without raising taxes.
Again, if you just joined us, State Senator Blake Tillery on the phone with us Tuesdays with Tillery. Speaking of the vaccine, we're in phase 1, but people here in Wayne County, and I'm sure across your district, keep asking, when's it going to be made available to the other people? When will be? And it seems there's been some hiccups with the phase 1, and a lot of people call that number, wait forever, then they get disconnected, or there's been a lot of bad reports about what's taken place so far. When do you think this is going to run smoothly, and when do you see everybody being able to get the vaccine when they want to?
Right, and as you said that, and I want to go back to that previous comment, that when we do something poorly, we need to own it, and we did a poor job in our first round, the first part of the rollout, and the people of our district particularly suffered for that, and I apologize to them. What you've seen is the governor engaged GEMA, the governor engaged the National Guard, public health again, to really revamp that distribution program. We're in phase 1A right now, which means that if you're over 65, if you're a frontline worker, first responder, that you are able to access that vaccine. As we have a lot of folks waiting for that. So until we can roll through and vaccinate all those folks who are on the front, I don't think that we'll be able to open it up for more. But as soon as that happens, I know that floodgate's going to open up, and more folks are going to, those who want it will be able to get it. If you don't want it, you don't have to get it. And I'm getting comments and calls from folks in our district about that as well. I don't see any mandate that you have to from the state, but those who want to, we need to make sure we've got that accessible for them. There's 2 new vaccines that we expect will go online in the next few days, and then that'll help as well as we try to turn out more vaccines and get them to areas. And we're engaging our independent pharmacists as well. I saw earlier today where we didn't have as many of all the hundreds of independent pharmacists in the state. We had less than 50 that were carrying the vaccine, but I think that there's a push even here at the Capitol among their association to up that number as well.
What's the security right now? Have you been around the Capitol yesterday or today?
Yeah, I'm sitting in my desk right now.
What's the security like? Is it as heavy as we've been told in reports? I mean, they make it sound like it's being surrounded like Fort Knox, like Washington, D.C. So how much police presence do you see? How much National Guard presence do you see up there?
I walked in this morning about 6:15, and there were Humvees. There were probably about half a dozen Humvees that were pulling into place around the Capitol. And that's unusual. But other than that, inside the building, it truly is business as normal. The people of Georgia, social unrest or not, are expecting us to get a job done today. And things are working inside just as they normally would, perhaps with the exception of the fact that everyone has to stop by a COVID testing station and spit into a cup and get their saliva tested. That's a little different. But inside the building, it's the same as it was even last year at this time.
Now, as we mentioned, you're in charge of the budget. Education is always a big part of the budget. The governor in the state address is proposing a one-time $1,000 payment to all educators across the state and education workers. How much does that come out to be?
Yeah, well, interesting that you should bring that up, Bob. So that would actually come out of CARES funds. So remember, the state was allocated roughly $4 billion out of the first CARES package of COVID relief back in last summer.
Peace of mind,
we had to
which will
spend all
have
that money by
remodeling and
December the
construction work.
31st, or we had to return it to the federal government. So you saw different things that we did: pop-up hospitals, we did different things with testing, et cetera. Local money was rolled out to local governments to help them. If you go into the Wayne County Courthouse and you see new shields in place in the clerk's office or the sheriff's office that weren't there previously, all of that was paid for out of COVID funds, or at least the vast majority was paid for out of COVID funds. We had a little bit left over. The governor was looking at what to do with that. It had to be expended by a certain date and time, so that's why he rolled that into, he thought that the best thing to do would be to put that towards $1,000 towards educators during this time for the work that they're doing to try to keep kids in school. So it actually will not be reflected in Georgia's budget because it's a federal fund that comes in. So what is reflected in the budget, though, is the governor's add back. As you know, during the recession that we faced last year, we pulled about $950 million out of the QBE funding formula. The governor's going to add back about $560 million of that in his amended budget, and then he intends to do the same with a little bit more in the FY22 budget. So when you take that, and that's not all. Let's look back at education even more. The federal government just announced in CARES 2 that they're going to roll $1.7 billion to Georgia. That's twice the amount of any reduction that we made last year. So I do think that public education is going to be substantially and fully funded with a mix of federal and state dollars. And that'll allow us to focus, again, on the things that we're looking for in the Department of Public Health with testing and rolling out vaccines, and with public safety, with making sure that our citizens are protected during all this social unrest.
Yesterday, I talked to Stephen Meeks. I found this bill I was talking about ahead of my newscast. Maybe you can help me. It's another proposed bill in education. Maybe you can explain what it is. It's a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 20 of the Official Code of Georgia relating to education, so as to raise the age of mandatory education from age 16 to 17, to revise provisions relating to adult literacy for purpose of conformity. So explain to me what that's all about.
Gotcha. Well, I haven't seen that bill specifically, and as I told you, if it isn't in the budget for the next few weeks, I probably won't see it. But we've seen that bill in the past, so I can talk about what it looked like then. In Georgia, once you reach the age of 16, if you decide you don't want to go to school anymore, you don't have to.
Okay, so that's what it is. It's going to raise it to 17, where you have to decide.
It would say that would raise to 17. I don't know what effect that would have. If you talk to some folks in the policy arena, they think it would have a major effect. Personally, I think if a kid doesn't want to be in school, it doesn't matter if you make them. They're not going to pick up what they would need to pick up anyway. There's got to be a desire on their end, which is why I'm highly interested in our vocational fields, where we can get folks into welding and construction and to tech jobs that employ you directly.
And those jobs are in need. You can talk to any technical college, and they're always being asked by companies like that, do you have any more graduates in those areas?
Yes, sir, you're absolutely right. You've seen Coastal Pines do a great job of pushing folks into those fields. The Joint Career Academy that Wayne County is involved with, that will be opening in the next year with Appling County, Bacon County, that will help provide direct employment even out of high school and allow some high school students to get those skills. And also the thing to remember is that training for those jobs is so much cheaper. I tell the story a lot about a friend of mine named Trey. We were at Vidalia High School together. He went into welding, and I went to law school. He has made so much more money than me that I will never catch him. And he didn't have student debt.
I don't know if I'd have said that way.
Yeah, and his student debt was zero, and you can't beat that. We, those are college is important. It's important for those folks who want to pursue certain paths, but college isn't the answer for every student. And we've got to be honest about that.
Coastal Pines will tell you they got about a 95% placement rate with their graduates out there. They've got connections with so many different companies and industries throughout the state of Georgia that it's a pretty good chance that you'll have a job when you get one of those technical degree certificates from Coastal Pines or the other technical colleges and throughout the state. But that was just a great testimony. There is somebody who did not want to go to college but got a great skill that's in need and is doing well. So in 2 years, you're doing good after a 2-year degree there.
That's right. And in many of those fields, the state of Georgia will pay 100% of your calls. It's just been deemed to be a high-demand field. And how things are deemed to be high-demand fields is because employers in our state are telling us we've got to have this job or that job. The state of Georgia will pay 100% of your costs if you'll enter into one of those fields.
Okay. Bob?
I know you deal with the budget mostly, but when the session does get underway, what are some the hot topic items? What's going to be debated strongly up on the session on the Hill?
Well, this session, as you and I spoke last week when we were, or 2 weeks ago, when we were able to be together in Jessup at the Chamber's legislative breakfast, I think there's really 3 topics that are going to dominate this session. It'll be the budget, and I'm selfish in that. I think that's always going to dominate every single session. COVID-19 relief, which you and I have hit on several times already this morning, and then elections. You still have election integrity issues that there are probably half a dozen bills that I've seen float through the halls across my desk. They don't. No one stops anything on my desk. I think they're a little bit concerned too because they see the mounting paperwork with the budget. But I've seen those as they're going around. There's a huge chance that those all combine into one elections integrity or elections reform bill. But the ones I've seen so far address everything from absentee ballot drop boxes to signature verifications to a variety of things that many of you have spoken to me about already personally. I've also seen something that's coming more from within with one of the things that is difficult for people to understand, but is something we've got to figure a way to address, is we want your ballot to be secret. No one needs to know who, Bob or Butch or Blake voted for. So if that ballot's secret, we can't have a signature on the ballot. That's why you always had an envelope inside the ballot and then the outside envelope that was signed, so that when someone checked the signature, as they were supposed to be checking signatures on the outside envelope, they then could take that outside envelope apart, and the inside envelope with the ballot went to a separate stack. We never knew who you voted for, but we knew that you were supposed to be voting. I think you may see a system now that uses technology to make sure that envelope, that ballot, and your original application for an absentee ballot are kept together and matched. We've got to be very careful that we still keep the ballot itself, who you voted for specifically, secret. But if all 3 of those things don't match, then we know that there's a problem, and that absentee ballot needs to be discarded or pushed to the side at least till more information can be checked. So that was probably the most interesting thing I've seen, using technology to verify that. Is also, I know you're going to see a move to do away with absentee balloting at will. In other words, go back to the way things were prior to, when I started voting early on, where you had to have a reason if you wanted to vote absentee.
Right.
Like I said, that might roll into a bigger bill that deals specifically with elections, or we may have 6 or 7 that individually deal with it.
Well, that was a concern of a lot of folks that I talked with, was as absentee balloting and voting at will was a concern of a lot of folks that it could be abused. And as you mentioned, up until previously, the last election or so, you had to have a reason to vote absentee. Now it's just done in mass. And a lot of folks feel that opens it up to all kinds of problems. And so it'll be interesting to see if we do go back to the system where you've got to have a reason. If not, you got 3 weeks to vote in advance, plus you have election day. That should give people plenty of opportunities to be able to vote. And that's what a lot of folks are saying out there, that they're just concerned about that absentee ballot at will, that it opens it up to a lot of questionable practices.
Well, those three topics, I believe, again, the budget, COVID, and election integrity, election reform will be the dominant topics. There's always going to be something else that pops up we're not even thinking of yet, and it'll hit us. It'll hit us soon, I'm sure.
What will the budget be around this year for the state of Georgia? The total final budget.
Amended's going to be about $26.5 billion.
$26.5 billion.
Last year it was 28.
Okay.
So that's, again, about $1.5 billion off, and then the 22 budget's going to be right around $27 billion.
All right, and what portion of that, is that still way over 50% for education, or where is that today?
Yeah, it probably will actually be a little bit higher now. It was 54%. You'll probably see that climb. The second largest category you have is health. That's about 23%. So, again, remember, 77-ish% of the budget is in two categories. It's in education, and then it's in health.
Okay, Bob?
One final question, Blake. Can people come visit the session? There are people that walk in.
Question.
I mean, that's what people are asking. In normal years, people go up and visit. There's all kinds of occasions that are being celebrated during the session. What's the schedule like for that?
Right. Well, there are no celebrations. So usually, like Savannah may bring up something from the coast for the day, and the folks from Okefenokee and Wayne County joins in with Okefenokee folks. They may bring gator tail and try to talk to folks about what's going on in their area. There are no large events at all. Usually you can reserve a room in the Capitol if you had a group like we would have. The leadership wing would come up and we reserve a room, and we usually me and Representative Meeks and Representative Werkheiser would buy their lunch and talk to them about what was going on in session that day. We cannot reserve rooms. That's been pushed out. And all this is about COVID, not about any of the social unrest, just to be clear. It's all about COVID. If you do come into the Capitol's still a public building. It's still open for the public. But if you do come in, they're going to run you through temperature scanners. And if you're going to be here on a regular basis in a government fashion, then you have to be COVID tested twice a week.
Senator Tillery, we got some text messages here that I want to get to quickly. Somebody wants to know, please repeat those job fields again that you mentioned about the technical college, and that folks can get that education to make a good career.
There's so many of them I couldn't repeat them, but I can tell you it's the Georgia in-demand fields. You can look at the Georgia Technical College website, TCSG. I'm going to get it wrong if I say it on the air, but it's the TCSG website, and we have those fields listed, but it's going to be fields like welding. It's going to be nursing. It's airplane mechanic, because guess what? We need those. So if you want to go into one of those fields, the state of Georgia, we'll pick up your tab because it matters to the economy of our state moving forward.
Yeah, just put in your search bar technical jobs, careers through the technical schools of Georgia, and you should be able to find it. Another text message that came in is, this is more of a federal issue, but somebody texted in, how come some people have not received their stimulus checks from Washington? Do you know?
That's a great question, man. I can promise you guys I never want to go to Washington, so I can't answer that one.
Well, you couldn't get in right now if you wanted to.
What is first to the first question? I'll get that link, and I do a weekly update of what's going on with the session. If you'd like to be included with that, go to BlakeTillery.com, give us your email address, and we'll make sure we send that out to you. And I'll try to include the link to those job fields in this week's summary. On the federal stimulus check question, while I can't tell you the answer to that, what I can tell you is where the state of Georgia, I tell you, I'm going to own it up when we're doing a poor job in certain fields, and we're still doing a poor job in unemployment. We have folks who have been requesting benefits since June, and we're just now getting those out the door. We are not doing well there.
You know why? There's such a delay in that?
One was the massive number of folks applying.
Okay.
But other states figured this out. We can figure this out too. Another has to do with our system. We did do some things that were invaluable on the front end, having employers file on behalf of employees, so it kind of helps speed up the application process and the verification process. We've also had a whole lot of fraud in our state, and so you've seen the Department of Labor get very, really, they're picking over every single one of them because the good get mixed with the bad. But that all being said, that is not an excuse. We have to do better. And if you're one of those people having issues, please don't hesitate to call my office. The best one to call is to call on up here to Atlanta at 404-656-0089. We have a list. We're going through it. We're going over with Department of Labor each week, going back over that list to ask where they are next. But remember that is an elected office in and of itself, and there's only so much ability we have there. But we are going to be advocating on your behalf.
Okay, other text messages that have come in says teachers are getting $1,000 one-time check. What about other state employees? Any thoughts there?
That's something we're looking at in the budget, particularly those who are dealing with other frontline matters like health and public safety, et cetera. We've got it, because the teachers were able to be paid out of CARES funds, that did not affect the state budget, as weird as that sounds. Those were federal dollars. It's hard for me to explain to you how it came out of one pot and not the other, but it did. It came out of a federal pot. So if we are going to find that for other employees, we've got to find it out of the state side, which means we have to either reduce something that's already being funded or find some other area of efficiency.
All right,
You'll see us look for that.
All right, another text message says, concerning the voting, someone suggested maybe there could be early voting, stay open late a couple of times during the period for those that work out of town, maybe up until about 7:30. So maybe that would help folks who want to vote early but cannot get there to the courthouse or whatever the government building they're using. That an early voting usually closes at 5, maybe a couple of times during the course of the early voting, they could stay open to 7:30. That was somebody's suggestion right there.
That's another great idea. I'll tell you that what we did to move in that direction about 4 years ago was have a Saturday voting.
Yeah, there is one Saturday.
To accommodate some of that.
Yeah, there is one Saturday that you can vote early during early voting, but somebody suggested during a weekday maybe stay open to 7:30 a couple times. Senator Tillery here on the phone with us this morning, live from Atlanta, from his office up there. Bob, any other questions for the senator?
Well, just as we mentioned, we appreciate you taking time, and I know you and Stephen Meeks and Bill always like to give out the information. If people are listening, want to get in touch with Blake Tillery, what's the best way to do it?
2 ways. You can, I would tell you right now, email is not the best way. Our emails have been crashed by folks emailing from out of state about issues that are pertinent to Georgia, but they're coming from North Carolina, they're coming from New York, they're coming from California, New Mexico, et cetera. So the best way really right now is to call. 404-656-0089 is the office number, but I don't mind if you call my cell phone.
404-0089. 656
0089.
0089.
Number.
Okay, that's your office number.
Or call my cell phone number. I don't mind. It's 912-245-9915. I'm about to be on the podium up here doing our budget hearing starting in about 10 minutes. In fact, I've got to go do a sound check.
Okay.
And if you want to watch those, feel free to tune in. If you go to the Senate website at www.senate.ga.gov, you can watch these live. They start at 9 a.m., and we're about to do our sound checks and get up and going just here in a few minutes.
All right, Senator Tillery.
Appreciate it, Blake. Talk to you next Tuesday.
Thank you, guys. Have a good morning.
Thank you so much. All right, the world-famous Butch and Bob Show right here on WIFO. Bob, any final questions or comments or anything this morning in the world? You know, you're taking your headsets off. You're ready to get out of here, huh? Time for breakfast. All right. World-famous Butch and Bob Show brought to you by Local Boys Construction, First Southern Bank, Murphy Builder Supply, and Damon's Famous Fingers and Wings.
Famous Butch and Bob Show.